Welcome back to the Important Nonsense Podcast. Normal service is resuming this week, or I should say today. 32 teams in 32 days. The other LA team, the LA Rams. Weird to say, considering they won a Super Bowl recently. But given the people I work with, it is the other LA team in this case. Neil Smith at that FF Nerd. Jason Draven at Mike Burland. Joining me again to take you through every team in the NFL, getting you prepped for your drafts at the end of this month. A couple quick PSAs. All the rankings that you will hear us reference come from Fantasy Pros. Fantasy Pros. We are part of their ECR. And thank you, Fantasy Pros, for letting us be an affiliate with you. We will obviously be referencing our own rankings along the way. All the depth charts that you see us reference come from Player Profiler. Shout out to Jack Kavanaugh. This show is based on 12-team redraft PPR focus, aka God's format. Check us out at importantnonsense.com. Sign up to be a member with us. Sign up for our Discord. Keep Jason company. He gets lonely. He needs people to talk to. Gentlemen, I feel like the Micro Machines guy. Is that a reference anyone gets anymore? Or am I just old? Like I just said a lot of words very quickly. Didn't breathe through any of that. We're going to break down the Rams. Normal service resumes. I will be hosting instead of derisively sitting, eating chips, and mocking my coworkers. I'm amazed they probably weren't paying attention to what I was doing. So that's why we're working together.
Most days.
We're reverting to type. I will be hosting, and Jason, it's hard, isn't it? You got to think and talk simultaneously. It's not easy. Like,
I don't do that anyway. So that's part of the fun. That's why you let me do that.
It's true. It's true. All right, gentlemen, let's rip this off because a lot less to cover, weirdly, for a team that won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. A lot less to cover from fantasy implications than on the Chargers. Just not as potent of an offense as their LA counterparts. It's weird to say, but it's just true. Starting with quarterback Matthew Stafford, back from injury. He will be starting for the team again. You got to question how many more years Matthew Stafford's going to be in the league, right? It's just getting to that point. The back stuff, his age. I have always maintained that when he got that ring, if I was him, I would have had it gauged for my middle finger as opposed to my ring finger. That's how I would wear that ring if I was him. And good for him. Like, good for him. Unfortunately for fantasy, it's hard to get super excited. He opens the year as the QB 19, translates to about 145 overall. If you go by actual where he should be for that, his ADP is 149 overall. And to be honest, I can't say I disagree. What would be the path to seeing Matthew? Do you think it's even possible for Matthew Stafford to get into, let's call it, the top 10 of quarterback?
I think it's possible. I mean, what was it, 2021? I think he was the top 5 quarterback overall. He threw for 40 touchdowns and 40 plus 4,500 or more yards. So I think it's possible. Is it likely? No. Just kind of looking at where he's going and the quarterbacks, right around the same rate. He's quarterback 21. What was it? 19. Yeah. So
he's currently 19.
19. Yeah. I mean, there's some upside with him. Like, okay, the team has one last hurrah and they get to that 2021 form, but I don't know. To me, it's just, it's very unlikely. I see him kind of at best finishing, a top 15 guy. And if things go perfect, he can finish in that top 12. But beyond that, I'm not super excited about Matthew Stafford.
The only positive, which I hate to bring up at all, but is he's probably going to have to throw more than he has because of the fact that their defense has gotten worse by a significant step down. So that is the one thing I could say that might catapult him up, but it's still tough.
Normally, I would argue about that and spend time picking apart how that's a narrative-based argument, but unfortunately, in this case, it's actually objectively true. It's just an objective fact. Their defense almost certainly will be worse. They do not have some of the powerhouses that they've had on that team previously, and they probably will be involved in some more shootouts.
So
based on that, normally,
that is the only plus side I can see for him and potentially getting up higher than what he is currently ranked at.
I would say the other upside is what's kind of baked in, which is that Cooper Kupp is healthy, and we'll get into that a little bit further. There's not a whole lot of analysis on it, but so yeah, Stafford. I think largely we're talking about the same thing. QB19 sounds about right. He's kind of a backup level option at this point for your fantasy draft. I wouldn't hate it.
Maybe.
If Superflex is a different thing. In Superflex, I might be a little more bullish because, everybody gets drafted in Superflex, and he would, especially if you play Scott Fishbowl rules, I would be more interested because, you get penalized for incompletions, but this is just straight redraft. So for this, I'd like him as a mid-level, backup option. If I've waited on quarterback, he is one of the ones that I find myself getting with a double tap. If I need to take two, especially if I get like a
Richardson.
That would be scary. I don't know that I would do that. I was more thinking something along the lines of like a Tua, where it's like if I end up, which we'll talk about tomorrow, if I was to bite the bullet on a Tua, given his injury, neither of these guys is the picture of health historically, but I want something that I feel like decent about backing it up. Or even if I went and got like a Goff, you know what I mean? I could do a Goff Stafford sandwich. I think that would be okay. That would be, you're going to get, it's actually kind of the Spider-Man meme in a lot of ways, really, between those two guys. Like, it kind of works the same way. You've got a dominant wide receiver, a team that's going to throw quite a bit, not a whole lot of weapons around it. Detroit's weapons are better. But, so really with Stafford, it's kind of just steady Eddie, to borrow a phrase from a different fantasy show. He's a ham and egger at this point. Like, it's just a McDonald's double stack. You know what I mean? You know what you get. It's not sexy. It's not even necessarily good for you, but you know what you're going to get. So his backup is Stetson Bennett, who I only bring up because his first name is Stetson, and I love it.
That's
Kudos to what a great name. What a great name. That man should definitely own a Stetson if he does not.
Big white one.
The running back room remains largely unchanged. Once again, the alluring object that is Cam Akers is back in our. If there was ever a poster child for potential, it's Cam Akers. It's this weird nexus of like, but it reminds me of a joke on South Park from about 20 years ago where it's like, my dad says you might be good someday. That's Cam Akers. That's how I feel about that. Like, he is a very polarizing figure in fantasy circles most years because, you see the tape, you see the upside, you see what he could do, but he just doesn't typically return on it. And most years, that's not being baked into the price. This year, it is a little bit, I think. So, real quick, and we'll get into it. RB19 translates to about 51 overall. He's going at 59 overall. He's going as about a 5th round pick. Still a little rich for my blood, personally, especially in a world where Joe Mixon and James Conner are going in the 3rd and 4th round, respectively. And then David Montgomery is going like in the 6th and 7th round. I still find myself not necessarily going in on the Akers. He's the one that I think is still being mispriced a little bit in that pantheon. But we're getting closer. We're getting closer.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, Akers is a situation where we've seen like 2, 3, or 4 game stretches of like, wow, this guy could be a top 12 running back. And that's all we've seen. We haven't seen a full season. We haven't even seen really a half a season from him. I think what's kind of baked into the ADP a little bit is he kind of won people some leagues last year because he had a monster last 3 weeks, weeks 14, 15, 16. That's kind of baked in a bit. I agree with you, though. Like, round 5 is a little rich. There's that potential there, and it's intriguing, and I don't see much behind him, which we'll get to, but it's one of those like, man, can I get him 1 round later?
I'd love to be able to do that,
yeah,
Mike. Right
exactly.
there with you. Love to be able to get him in the 6th round. That'd be phenomenal.
That's exactly where I'm at. Like, 5th round, a little too rich. 6th round, late, early 7th, I'm in. So that's kind of where I'm at with Akers. If you really believe in him, you want to take him where he's going at ADP, okay, we'll see. I'm not saying like he's no way he's going to finish where he's being, his ADP is, because he could. We've seen the potential. So, yeah, I'm right there with you, Neil. Just if I can get him around later, I'm happy, but 5th round's a little too rich for me.
Little steep. Jason.
Yeah, I mean, even if as an anchor, I wouldn't be able to use him as like, if he is your only running back, that's terrifying to me. So if you're doing,
I hope that's not the case.
Some people, that is one. I'm just bringing it up because who knows?
I won't
Zero
be how
RB
my
nonsense.
team works, but I do see the concern is that if you went wide receiver, quarterback, and then you went to Akers in the 5th, and that's going to be that. I don't know that you'd have to be really stacked. The wide receivers you picked, that would have to be really, really good. Like,
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the only way that I can see getting him at the 5th round. I can't bring myself to do it. So I'm not big on him, but I also don't trust him to be consistent or to be the one that they use. I mean, I do think he will be the main running back, but I do expect this to be a committee, and so that also makes me a little nervous.
oh wow, I don't think it'll be a committee at all because we'll get into it right now. Backing him up is Kyron Williams, who has done literal nothing at any point. Zach Evans, same story, done literal nothing at any point. There's a reason none of these guys have ADPs. And then Royce the Choice Freeman, who couldn't even beat out Philip Lindsay at the height of his career. Don't like that either. Kudos to Royce Freeman for still being in the league, though. I will give him that much credit. That's amazing that man is still in the league and is not playing in like the XFL or something. But for me, there's no handcuff here. There's nothing that I want. I think if something did happen to Akers, it's a nasty, nasty, gross committee of things I don't want. And for me, it's if I'm going to go this way and I'm going to commit to Akers, I'm just committing to Akers. I don't want any part of this running back room past that.
Yeah, I generally agree. Like, just not much behind him. I mean, Zach Evans, he's a guy that was highly recruited out of high school, never lived up to it in college. Like, don't see much there. Kyron Williams, it's like when Cam Akers is going through his whole ordeal of, is he going to be on the team? Are they going to trade him? Are they going to cut him? And Kyron Williams still really didn't do anything last year. I think he even had a foot injury.
He did, but
he was injured for a lot of the season.
Even forgiving that, he was terrible.
Yeah. It's tough to see. I agree with you, Neil. I think it's going to be more of a one running back type of situation, which is it boosts Cam Akers up a little bit for me, but just not to where he's being drafted.
I think that's part of the reason why he's in the 5th round. I think you hit it too earlier, where it's like he won some people their league. So you always see that year on year. You have a league winner, they always get inflated a little bit. In this case, I think you couple that with he's the only guy that you're looking at on that roster where it's like, what is the rest of this? And the answer is not anything you want. On the opposite end of that, we'll go and talk about wide receiver because returning from injury is fantasy football darling and just all around stud Cooper Kupp. Good old Cooper Kupp opens the season. People are not deterred by the injury last year. Opens the season as the wide receiver 4 by ranking, which would translate to about 9 overall in a normal world. But he's going at 5. And to be honest with you, I don't even care. That's fine. You want to take Cooper Kupp at 5? I got no issue with this. Fine with me. He's my wide receiver 4 as well. So I know actually you could argue that between him and Tyreek Hill, you could flip flop it between 3 and 4, just depending on whatever floats your boat. One is a better down the field threat. The other is a target monster and the best player on his team at this point, given what's happened to the defense. It's wheels up on Cooper Kupp.
I mean, last year he had
it even rhymed.
3 games under 16 fantasy points, and one of them was
injury.
No, that one includes the injury game.
Oh, that includes the injury game. Oh, good.
So
good.
In his 10 weeks of playing, it was 16.4 in week 3 and 16.7 in week 6, and the injury game where he only got you 2.9. So outside of that, he had 2 games of 31.8 points, a game of 26.2, and a game of 25.9. Oh, I guess in week 9, 26.8. So didn't suck. Dude, per game was the best wide receiver, and it wasn't close.
Yeah, and he was like, I was okay with him. This was pre-injury. I was okay with him. If you, in a PPR league, if you wanted to take him number 1 overall, I wasn't going to argue with you. I was okay with it over Justin Jefferson and CMC and Chase, just because he was so dominant. You look at his 2021 season, he averaged almost 26 points a game. Justin Jefferson last year averaged under 22 points a game. So he was like 4 points a game better.
Right.
He was that good. And it didn't really seem like it was changing up until he got hurt last year. So I was okay with him as the number one overall pick. The injury does play a little bit into it. You know, I'm doing a slow draft now and drafting, and like we said, it's August 9th. And I came to the decision, do I take Tyreek or Cooper Kupp? And I took Tyreek just because of the injury. You know, so that does play a little bit into it. But I think when most people are drafting late August or early September, we should have a kind of an idea where Cooper Kupp is. And again, like if you want to take him as the number one overall player, or the wide receiver one, I really have no arguments to it. So he's good at football, like we want to say.
There's not much to discuss. The man's a stud. Similar to the running back room, it goes in the tank really quickly. Their wide receiver 2 on the team is Van Jefferson, who, look, Van Jefferson he's better than a guy. He's not just a body that they play. He's a little better than that. He's a good field stretcher. He can get open. He can get down the field with his arm up. Stafford looks for him with reasonable acuity. The problem is he's not much more than that. His route tree is incredibly limited. He really struggles at like creating separation through his route running. He really needs to beat you with his athleticism, and his hands could really be better. He drops a lot of stuff that other people would catch. Van Jefferson is like, Jason, you'll probably appreciate this. Van Jefferson is like, wishes he was Josh Reynolds. Like that's kind of what it is. Like Van Jefferson wishes he was Josh Reynolds. That's who he wants to be when he grows up one day. And because of that, it's baked into the risk here. Van Jefferson is draftable. He opens the season as the wide receiver 71 by rank, translates to about 169 overall, but the public hates it because the public has dealt with this before, and so have I. I've rostered Van Jefferson. I know why this is happening. He's coming in at 188 overall, so basically at the end of your fantasy draft. I think 188 is actually probably closer to right. That's where I would be willing to get invested in this. If something was to happen to Cooper Kupp, you'd get a little bit of return on investment. The problem is that his coverage would get harder, and he's struggled with that as well. So he makes his hay really as not being the true alpha. He kind of can't do it. So to be honest with you, there's not really a whole lot to get excited about with Van Jefferson. He is a dude, and he will likely find his way, I think, onto your guys' waiver show before too long. He will probably get drafted, cut, something will happen, and then he'll find his way onto the waiver show. It's not something that I would. You don't draft Van Jefferson and you're like, nailed it, yes, got him. Like that's not the reaction to that.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, I mean, at best, he's like a flex option in PPR leagues.
On a bye week.
Yeah.
When buys happen. And even then, you don't feel great about it. You're kind of looking at the waiver wire like, is there something else I could maybe find that I like better? Yeah. Like, I don't know about that. Beyond that, it's a who's who of disappointment. You've got Ben Skoranek, who no ADP for a reason. Look, Ben Skoranek had a nice little wishes he was Tyler Boyd looking season last year, working out of the slot. If you really squint, you can kind of see what I think the Rams see, which is he can work in the slot. He creates some space. He's got decent hands, but he's just not that good at football. He's just not something to get excited about. He is a dude. He's not a dynasty prospect. He's not a redraft prospect. He is a guy. There would need to be a lot of injuries for Ben Skoranek to be something that you're really looking at. And I'm not talking about just on the Rams. I'm talking about in your league. There would need to be a lot of injuries before you're looking at Skoranek and being like, yeah, that's a good one. We'll do these all in turn because it's really fast. Tutu Atwell is their other player. He's a poor man's Van Jefferson. Run down the field with your arm up. He's very fast. I'll give him that much. But beyond that, that's really all that it is. It's like short John Ross, for those who understand that reference from back in the day. Mike gets what I'm talking about. I appreciate at least one person understanding that. He's really not tall, but he's very quick, but he's not really a polished NFL player. He's got no route running ability. There's a reason he doesn't have an ADP either. And then Puka, the rookie, Puka. I can't get excited about Puka. Maybe in a few years.
Yeah. He's a dynasty guy.
Yeah. Name to know.
Dynasty guy in the 4th round of your dynasty draft, right at the end. You throw him on the end of your bench, maybe. Puka is going to have a long road to having any kind of redraft fantasy relevance. So it's not even, normally we do like the whole names to know thing. You don't even need to know that name. You'll remember it because his name is Puka, but it's not really something you need.
Like the shell.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the shell. We'll go right into tight end. I mean, it's for my money, what I think is the real number 2 target on this team. Like at the end of the year, who will have the number 2 amount? It's Tyler Higbee, who is not good, but finds himself in a very fortuitous spot where he's going to get a lot of targets, and Stafford trusts him, and tight end is a disaster. And what's hilarious is the public seems to be wise to this, because he opens the season as the tight end 13, which would translate to about 150 overall. His ADP is 135. And to be honest with you, you know all my feelings on tight end and how I hate them, unless you're Travis Kelce. I roster a lot of Tyler Higbee even at 135. He's the perfect double tap candidate if you wait on tight end. Get him and get somebody else right in that neighborhood. Get him, get Cole Kmet. Get him, get Greg Dulcich. Get him, get one of the other guys in that range. Or if you want to wait a little bit and do what Jason tells you to do, get Juwan Johnson. Get Higbee and Juwan Johnson. Do that. Whatever. That's fine. I don't care. Like, Higbee is a really good one because he's not going to do anything special, but he is going to get some red zone targets. He's just going to be the number 2 target getter in general. He's not great, but I don't need him to be great. I just need him to be available.
Yep. And he can do that for you. He's very good at it. He's done it pretty much every year that he's been there. It was him and, oh my gosh, now I can't think of the guy Everett.
Gerald Everett. Yeah, Gerald Everett.
Exactly. That's why I hate. Oh my.
Gerald Everett literally got in his car
and mad about it.
Gerald Everett literally got in his car and drove to the other side of town. That's all that happened with that deal.
Yeah.
I like how Jason's still butthurt about Gerald Everett like 3 years on. Like we're 3 years into this and he's still not happy about it. Herbert likes Everett.
He's fine.
One thing I'll say is go do yourself a favor to the people who are listening. Look at Tyler Higbee and Evan Ingram's stats and compare them, and they're almost identical.
I'm glad you brought this up, actually.
I think Evan Ingram has like 120 yards more than less than a point per game.
Evan Ingram is being drafted at 88 overall.
Yes, 88 overall. Tyler Higbee, we mentioned it. You can literally get 60 picks later or so, 50, 60 picks
roughly.
later.
If we want to go by round, you're talking about what is effectively like the 12th round at that. Yeah, it's like the 12th round for.
Yeah, it's just that's crazy to me. I mean,
you're 5 to 6 full rounds clear is what that is. Like,
yeah, I love Higbee. I mean, we always we talk about it. Can you be the number 1 or number 2 target on a team? That's kind of your path to fantasy relevancy when you're a tight end, and Higbee can easily be the second target on this team because we spent 7 minutes on the receivers. Like there's not much there besides Cooper Kupp.
Oh no, we're done. This is going to be the shortest show. We're done. Like feel free to vamp if you want because we're done.
The other name to know is Hunter Long because that's who when it came in.
I disagree. I don't think you need to know who Hunter Long is.
Yes, because if there's an injury, he's the one who showed up to play and had value.
All right.
So that's the only reason.
Hunter Long. There you go. Jason recommend knowing who Hunter Long is. My advice is don't even bother committing that to memory. It's a long path for that to matter. But yeah, Tyler Higbee is actually the one Ram that I consistently like. It's kind of fun. I don't find myself with that many Cooper Kupp shares because it's hard to get. You know what I mean? You have to have like a top 4 or 5 pick to realistically get Cooper Kupp. Van Jefferson is like, I don't want it. Just to be honest. Cam Akers, we went through it. It's a little bit too rich for my blood. If he falls, I'm in. But it's right on that cut line. So the things that I find myself with, Matthew Stafford as my backup quarterback, which is weird to say 2 years removed from a Super Bowl run where he was like a consensus top 10 QB. But yeah, Matthew Stafford is my backup quarterback at a value, and I get a lot of Tyler Higbee because nobody wants it. No, well, I shouldn't say nobody because the ADP bears out that some people want it. But comparatively, like nobody gets excited about it. It's weird to me that I'm finding myself with Stafford and Higbee, especially how I have poo-pooed Higbee for years. But it's finally adjusted itself in the equilibrium to where I'm like, yeah, I don't even need you to be good at that price. I just need you to show up on Sunday and run around. You'll get what I need.
I totally agree. Like it's I'm fine with Cooper Kupp if you have that top 4 or 5 pick, and it's really no one else. If Cam Akers falls, like you said, Tyler Higbee, he's that double tap at the tight end. So not much else to talk about with the Rams.
It's weird, right?
It is.
This was like a long show a couple of years ago where it was like we have to go into it and really break it down. And no, we're done. Jason, final thoughts. We wrap up the crosstown rival.
Well, my thing is, I wish the Chargers would get rid of the powder blue. I'm not a big fan of that, but
it's my own fault.
oh, my bad.
It's my own fault. I told him to vamp.
You knew it was coming.
I told him to vamp. It's my own fault. I did this. I did it. I am to blame.
I was like on that same note,
things.
we can go to Untold, which the Johnny Manziel one is actually pretty interesting. I've really enjoyed it. But
I don't want to get into it. It's kind of depressing. Like it's the whole story about what happened to him and like his whole. It's kind of weirdly inspiring in certain ways, but it's also really depressing. And it's not really a good place on which to end this show. But
just throwing out ideas.
Well, it's either that or talk about retiring the powder blues, and I'm not going to do either. So here's what we are going to do. We are going to join you tomorrow to break down the Miami Dolphins. And until then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!